At a gathering, my girlfriend presented me as her housemate who covers 50% of the expenses. She found it amusing. I chose not to dispute it. 14 days later, her property owner reached out. Guess who had vanished without a trace overnight? The instant the decision crystallized, it produced no audible cue. It was a Saturday evening, and we were attending a celebration, organized by one of my girlfriend Chloe's content creator acquaintances. The residence was crowded with individuals who all appeared to converse in sponsored partnerships and staged snapshot moments. I was positioned near the beverage station when Chloe seized my elbow, pulling me toward a compact circle. Her closest companion, Jessica, was dominating the discussion, a flute of sparkling wine in one grip and her smartphone in the other. And this, Chloe declared with a dramatic, expansive motion in my direction. It's Alex. He's my fantastic housemate who handles half the costs. The circle chuckled. It wasn't a cruel chuckle, more of a belittling, condescending giggle. Jessica offered me a sympathetic grin, the sort you'd bestow on a loyal pup that had just mastered staying. "Oh, Chloe, you're awful," she tweeted before redirecting to her dialogue, my presence already erased. I grinned, a strained, courteous grin I had refined over the past 12 months. I didn't debate. I didn't rectify her. I didn't highlight that my 50% of the costs encompassed the full $1,500 lease on her two-bedroom unit, every utility charge and the regular food shipments, while her 50% involved the streaming service fee and the sporadic aromatic wax light. In that instance, amid the clamor and merriment, I merely nodded and recorded a psychological marker. It was the ultimate statistic I required. The initiative was formally deemed unsuccessful, and it was moment to activate the departure procedure. Allow me to rewind. I'm not a pushover. I'm a data examiner. My whole existence centers on reasoning, trends, and optimal approaches. When I encountered Chloe 2 years prior, I was captivated by her. She was magnetic, driven, and existed in a realm so contrary to my own ordered actuality. She was striving to establish a profession as a daily life content creator, and I viewed it as an endeavor, a new venture. I was prepared to act as a funding source of kinds. When her prior co-occupant departed a year ago, she was in distress. She couldn't sustain the unit independently. I identified a rational resolution. I earned substantially more income than her. I could relocate and manage the primary expenditures to provide her the steadiness to expand her platform, and we could construct a shared tomorrow. It was a commitment. I outlined the conditions explicitly. I would oversee the essential funding, she would handle the domestic duties, and we would reevaluate in 1 year to determine if her pursuit was turning viable and our alliance was functioning. My identity was never added to the rental contract. She was the exclusive contract holder. I was merely an authorized resident who configured an automatic transfer from my financial institution to the property owner for the complete lease amount each cycle. It was a streamlined, effective setup, but throughout the past year, the indicators began shifting unfavorable. Her platform involved capturing images of lavish morning meals I funded and garments she acquired with a financing card I guaranteed for. The domestic oversight was her abandoning plates in the basin and grumbling that I selected the incorrect variety of nut-based dairy. The alliance was her and her associates, headed by the perpetually irritating Jessica, delivering understated jabs at my cost. They perceived me as a subdued, unexciting tool, the dependable back-end operation that maintained their vibrant front-end operating seamlessly. They never grasped that the reserved individual who evaluates frameworks for a career is the one who detects every defect, every waste, and every weakness. The housemate remark wasn't a singular event. It was the validation of a sequence. She didn't regard me as an equal. She regarded me as an asset to be utilized, a fund source with mobility. And in my domain, when a framework is inherently flawed and wasteful, you don't persist in applying fixes. You retire it and develop something superior. So I grinned, sampled my beverage, and commenced strategizing her retirement. Update 1: the 14 days after that gathering were, externally, entirely routine. I was agreeable. I was supportive. I performed the role of the encouraging partner. Internally, I was an automaton carrying out an intricate scheme. Stage 1 was procurement. I utilized my midday breaks for 3 days inspecting residences. I located an ideal single-bedroom condominium in a fresh development in the city center. It was pristine, contemporary, and simple. Everything Chloe's disorganized, theatrical unit was not. I executed the contract, submitted the security amount, and established an occupancy date for 14 days from the gathering day. Stage 2 was coordination. Chloe and Jessica had been organizing a relaxation and purchasing weekend getaway for the precise weekend I required. It was ideal. They'd be absent from Friday midday until Sunday evening. I arranged a relocation service, the finest and priciest I could locate, for that Saturday. I requested a 4-person team and informed them the task was a complete pack and relocate. I desired my withdrawal to be rapid and without residue. I passed the nights that week discreetly readying. I examined every chamber, every storage area, every compartment, and psychologically marked my items. I employed a basic program on my device to image and list everything that belonged to me, from my attire and volumes to my culinary tools and the premium computing arrangement in my workspace. This wasn't merely about retrieving my possessions. It was about generating a flawless documentation, ensuring no opportunity for her to subsequently assert I had appropriated something of hers. The day they departed for their excursion was a pinnacle in misrepresentation. I assisted Chloe in preparing her luggage, advised her to enjoy a splendid time, and embraced her farewell. She and Jessica were elated with anticipation, discussing all the outlets they intended to visit. "Don't engage in too much dull amusement without me," Chloe remarked as she exited the entrance. "I won't," I responded, and I was sincere. The instant her vehicle was beyond the pathway, I transitioned into implementation mode. I began with my workspace. I containerized my files, my storage units, and my individual items into marked cartons. I disassembled my workstation and seat. By the time I retired on Friday evening, my entire occupational existence was secured, and the workspace appeared as a barren and used visitor chamber. I rested on the sofa. Saturday morning, the relocation team arrived at 9 o'clock precisely. They were outstanding. I guided them through the unit, indicating every object on my electronic list. My attire, my hygiene products, my volumes, the display in the common area which was mine, the seating they were occupying which was mine, the superior brewing device she utilized daily for her online content. The team operated with muted expert proficiency. They encased my furnishings, secured my belongings, and transferred everything onto the vehicle. While they labored, I performed a thorough cleansing of the spaces I was emptying. I polished the vacant racks in the storage, sanitized the lavatory basin, and scoured the area where my workstation had stood. I aimed to leave an absence, not disorder. The final item to depart was the cushion from our sleeping area. It was mine, acquired before I even encountered her. I left her the sleeping frame, which was hers, and the support base. A naked support base in a vacant chamber possesses a specific austere, expressive essence. By 3 in the afternoon, they were finished. The vehicle was filled, and the unit felt disturbingly vast and vacant. I conducted one ultimate inspection with my program, marking off every object. Flawless implementation. I compensated the team liberally, and they proceeded toward my fresh existence. I remained positioned in what was now, indisputably, Chloe's unit. Her rosy, plush ornaments and motivational phrase wall decorations now appeared isolated and ridiculous. The concluding action was to disconnect the link. I settled on the ground, retrieved my portable computer, and accessed my financial portal. I found the recurring monthly lease transfer and terminated it. Then, I drafted a precisely phrased correspondence to the property owner, an individual I had conversed with only once when I initially relocated in. The correspondence was courteous and official. I indicated that, as of this date, I had permanently departed the location at her address. I noted to him that I was never a signatory on the rental contract, and that all forthcoming interactions and monetary obligations regarding the property should be addressed to the exclusive contract holder, Chloe. I included a numerical copy of the initial pact, displaying her as the sole occupant. I dispatched it. Then I accessed my device. I restricted Chloe's contact. I restricted Jessica's contact. I navigated every networking site and restricted Chloe, Jessica, and their whole group of associates. I constructed an electronic barrier. I desired complete quietude. I desired the repercussions to reach her from a realm that I was no longer involved in. I took one final glance around the unit, at the specter of an existence I had committed to. I experienced no melancholy, no fury. I just experienced the serene fulfillment of a complicated issue resolved. I departed, placing my access device on the preparation surface and sealed the entrance behind me. Update 2. The initial week in my new condominium was serene. Unpacking and arranging my personal area, precisely as I desired it, was restorative. My frameworks were operational again. My computing setup, my brewing device, my existence. Everything was optimal, reasoned, and delightfully devoid of turmoil. The quietude from Chloe and her group was total, exactly as I had engineered. The initial ripple of the seismic event I had initiated arrived the subsequent Monday, slightly over a week after my departure. It wasn't from Chloe, but from a shared contact, a person named Ben who was more my associate than hers. He transmitted me a message. "Hey buddy, is everything all right with you and Chloe? She's been attempting to contact you and is somewhat losing it." I responded with a straightforward, "We're no longer paired. I've advanced." Ben's reply returned immediately. "Okay, wow. She's informing others you simply vanished on her and that you are indebted to her for lease funds." I nearly chuckled. The storyline was already being crafted. I was the antagonist who had deserted the vulnerable, aspiring content creator. I just messaged back, "Not my concern anymore, buddy. Be well." I knew the actual tempest wouldn't strike until the first of the month, which was still a week distant. The first of the month arrived and passed. I settled the lease for my new condominium. On the second of the month, I received a hysterical call from Ben. He said Jessica had contacted him, yelling, because Chloe's property owner had just phoned her, and raged that the lease hadn't been settled. Chloe had evidently been disregarding his contacts, assuming it was an error. This was the contact I had been anticipating. Not to me, but to her. The framework was operating. Chloe, unable to contact me, had evidently plunged into complete alarm. She didn't possess $1,500. Her earnings from her networking updates was irregular and minimal, scarcely sufficient to fund her weekend morning meals, let alone a month's lease in a metropolis like this. That's when the genuine assault commenced. Jessica, being the devoted but ineffective closest companion, assumed the role of Chloe's defender. She established a fresh networking profile and dispatched me an extended, incoherent message. It was a masterpiece, packed with charges and slurs. She labeled me a coward, an exploiter, a fiend. She asserted I had deceived Chloe into relying on me and then yanked the foundation from beneath her. The most absurd element was her assertion that I had pilfered items from the unit. She said Chloe's preferred brewing device was absent. It was my brewing device. I had the proof of purchase. I captured an image of the message and forwarded it to my legal advisor with a note. For the records. Then I restricted the new profile. The next day, Chloe's mother phoned me. I nearly didn't respond, but my interest prevailed. She was remarkably composed, which was almost more unsettling. She described that Chloe was extremely distressed and that there had obviously been a confusion. She said Chloe was prepared to overlook my juvenile conduct if I would simply contact her and send her the lease funds. I was courteous. I was resolute. With all respect, I said, Chloe and I are no longer in a pairing. I have departed her unit. The contract is in her name and the monetary duty is hers. I am not legally or ethically required to settle her lease. But she can't manage it, her mother cried out, her tone finally breaking. She'll face removal. Where will she reside? That is an issue for Chloe to address, I replied steadily. I aided her for a full year, providing her a chance to develop her profession. She opted to belittle and undervalue that aid. The conditions of our setup are concluded. I wished her a pleasant day and disconnected before she could reply. The property owner, a strict, straightforward elderly gentleman, evidently issued Chloe a 5-day notification to settle lease or encounter removal actions. This detail came again through Ben, who is now my reluctant informant. Chloe was in ruins. She had evidently attempted to start a crowdfunding campaign, asserting her harmful former partner had left her impoverished. It collected about $50, mostly from her relative. Jessica shared an extended, emotional narrative about Chloe's situation, which received numerous compassionate remarks but no real monetary assistance. Their digital associates were pleased to provide symbols of folded hands, but not a solitary currency. The highlight, per Ben, was the breakdown of her bond with Jessica. Chloe had evidently anticipated relocating with Jessica, but Jessica occupied a small single-unit residence and had no desire in sheltering her financially strained, jobless companion. Their bond, it emerged, was founded on the basis of morning meals and purchasing excursions. Without my funds to sustain that way of life, their connection crumbled. They had a huge confrontation and Chloe was now genuinely isolated. The backing network she believed she possessed was just a group of utilizers, identical to her. Final update, it has been 2 months since I departed. The concluding chapter of this theater unfolded precisely as the reasoning predicted it would. Chloe was incapable of settling the lease. She couldn't locate a new co-occupant on such brief notice. And even if she had, she couldn't manage the security and initial month's lease for them. The removal procedure advanced. About 3 weeks ago, Ben informed me that he observed Chloe and her guardians transferring her items out of the unit. There was no relocation vehicle, just her father's pickup. She was weeping and her guardians appeared enraged. The content creator way of life compressed into paper containers and placed into the rear of a decade-old vehicle. Her networking visibility has imploded. She attempted to shift her platform to focus on surmounting challenges, but it appeared as complaining and privileged. Her audience, who were there for the images of elegant drinks and fresh attire, rapidly disengaged. Her remark areas, once filled with admiration, are now largely vacant. She had nothing to provide individuals except a way of life that was never truly hers to begin with. Jessica and the remaining associate circle have entirely deserted her. Their networking is now packed with images of them at the same familiar morning meal locations, just with Chloe noticeably missing. Their devotion was to the way of life, not to the individual. I did receive one ultimate indirect communication from her. Her mother dispatched me an extended correspondence last week. It was a strange blend of begging and blame. She asserted I had shattered her daughter's self-assurance and wrecked her profession opportunities. She said Chloe was now residing back at home in her youth sleeping area, was profoundly saddened, and it was all my responsibility. The correspondence concluded with a requirement that I settle them a single payment of $10,000 for psychological strain and moving costs. I redirected the correspondence to my legal advisor. He responded with a one-sentence reply on my behalf. We completely dismiss your unfounded requirements and will regard any additional contact as intimidation. That was the conclusion of that. The genuine fulfillment for me wasn't in her defeat, but in the pristine, reasoned triumph of my own strategy. I didn't shout, I didn't debate, I didn't participate in turmoil. I detected a defective framework, devised a resolution, and carried it out impeccably. I retrieved what belonged to me and extracted myself from the calculation. Her collapse was not my action. It was the outcome of her own decisions finally aligning with her once the protection was removed. Oh, and there was one last minor element, one ultimate statistic I left for her. Before I departed the unit that final day, I approached the cooling unit. Attached to it, with a fun fastener she adored, was a printed document. It was a thorough overview from my financial program displaying the $1,500 lease settlement I had made to her property owner every cycle for the past 12 cycles. At the top, I had inscribed a basic message with a dark marker. It just said,